It's a beautiful warm spring morning, and a man and his wife are spending the day at the zoo. She's wearing a cute, loose fitting pink spring dress, sleeveless with straps. He's wearing his normal jeans and a t shirt. The zoo is not very busy this morning. As they walk through the ape exhibit, they pass in front of a very large, hairy gorilla. Noticing the gorilla goes ape. No pun intended. He jumps up on the bars and, holding on with one hand and 2 feet, he grunts and pounds his chest with his free hand. He is obviously excited at the pretty lady in the wavy dress, and the husband, noticing the excitement, thinks this is funny. He suggests that his wife tease the poor fellow some more. The husband suggests she pucker her lips, wiggle her bottom at him, and play along. She does, and Mr. Gorilla gets even more excited, making noises that would wake the dead. Then the husband suggests that she let one of her straps fall to show a little more skin. She does, and Mr. Gorilla is about to tear the bars down. Now, try lifting your dress up your thighs and sort of fan it at him. This drives the gorilla absolutely crazy, and now he's doing flips. Then the husband nabs his wife by the hair, rips open the door to the cage, slings her in with the gorilla, and slams the cage door shut. Now tell him you have a headache. A group of girlfriends are on vacation when they see a 5-story hotel with a sign that reads, "For women only." Since they were without their boyfriends or parents, they decide to go in. The desk clerk, a very attractive guy, explains to them how it works. "We have 5 floors. Go up floor by floor, and once you find what you are looking for, you can stay there. It's easy to decide since each floor has signs telling you what's inside." So they start going up, and on the first floor the sign reads, "All the men here have it short and thin." The friends laugh and, without hesitation, move on to the next floor. The sign on the second floor reads, "All the men here have it long and thin." Still, this wasn't good enough. So the friends move up to the third floor, where the sign reads, "All the men here have it short and thick." This was still another disappointment, but knowing there are still 2 floors left, they move on to the next floor. On the fourth floor, the sign was perfect. "All the men here have it long and thick." The women get all excited and are going in when they realize that there is still 1 floor left. Wondering what they were missing, they go to the 5th floor, where the sign reads, "There are no men here." This floor was built only to prove that it is impossible to please a woman. 3 days after his wife disappeared in a kayaking accident, an Anchorage man answered his door to find 2 grim-faced Alaska state troopers. "We're sorry, Mr. Wilkins, but we have some information about your wife," said one trooper. "Tell me, did you find her?" Wilkins shouted. The troopers looked at each other. One said, "We have some bad news, some good news, and some really great news. Which do you want to hear first?" Fearing the worst, an ashen Mr. Wilkins said, "Give me the bad news first." The trooper said, "I'm sorry to tell you, sir, but this morning we found your wife's body in Kashmak Bay." "Oh my God!" exclaimed Wilkins. Swallowing hard, he asked, "What's the good news?" The trooper continued, "When we pulled her up, she had 12 25-pound king crabs and 6 good-sized Dungeness crabs on her." Stunned, Mr. Wilkins demanded, "If that's the good news, what's the great news?" The trooper said, "We're going to pull her up again tomorrow." Working people frequently ask retired people what they do to make their days interesting. I went to the store the other day. I was in there for only about 5 minutes. When I came out, there was a cop writing out a parking ticket. I went up to him and said, "Come on, buddy. How about giving a senior a break?" He ignored me and continued writing the ticket. I called him a Nazi. He glared at me and started writing another ticket for having worn tires. So I called him a piece of dog shit. He finished the second ticket and put it on the windshield with the first. Then he started writing a third ticket. This went on for about 20 minutes. The more I abused him, the more tickets he wrote. Personally, I don't give a damn. My car was parked around the corner. I try to have a little fun each day now that I'm retired. It's important at my age. A man escapes from prison, where he's been locked up for 15 years. He breaks into a house to look for money and guns. Inside, he finds a young couple in bed. He orders the guy out of bed and ties him to a chair. While tying the homeowner's wife to the bed, the convict gets on top of her, kisses her neck, then gets up and goes into the bathroom. While he's in there, the husband whispers over to his wife, "Listen, this guy is an escaped convict. He's probably spent a lot of time in jail and hasn't seen a woman in years. I saw how he kissed your neck. If he wants, don't resist. Don't complain. Do whatever he tells you. Satisfy him no matter how much he nauseates you. This guy is obviously very dangerous, and if he gets angry, he'll kill us both. Be strong, honey. I love you. His wife responds, he wasn't kissing my neck. He was whispering in my ear. He told me that he's gay, thinks you're cute, and asked if we had any Vaseline. I told him it was in the bathroom. Be strong, honey. I love you too. The only cow in a small Kentucky town stopped giving milk. The people did some research and found that they could buy a cow just across the state line in Illinois for $200. They brought the cow from Illinois, and the cow was wonderful. It produced lots of milk all of the time, and the people were very happy. They decided to acquire a bull to mate with the cow to produce more cows like it. They would never have to worry about their milk supply again. They bought the bull and put it in the pasture with their beloved cow. However, whenever the bull tried to mount the cow would move away. No matter what approach the bull tried, the cow would move away from the bull, and he could not succeed in his quest. The people were very upset and decided to ask the vet, who was very wise, what to do. They told the vet what was happening. Whenever the bull tries to mount our cow, she moves away. If he approaches from the back, she moves forward. When he approaches her from the front, she backs off. An attempt from the side, she walks away to the other side. The vet thought about this for a minute and asked, did you by chance buy this cow in Illinois? The people were dumbfounded, since no one had ever mentioned where they bought the cow. You are truly a wise vet, they said. How did you know we got the cow in Illinois? The vet replied with a distant look in his eye. My wife is from Illinois. George W. was out jogging one morning along the parkway when he tripped, fell over the bridge railing, and landed in the creek below. Before the Secret Service guys could get to him, 3 kids who were fishing pulled him out of the water. He was so grateful he offered the kids whatever they wanted. The first kid said, I want to go to Disneyland. George said, no problem. I'll take you there on Air Force One. The second kid said, I want a new pair of Nike Air Jordans. George said, I'll get them for you and even have Michael sign them. The third kid said, I want a motorized wheelchair with a built-in TV and stereo headset. Bush is a little perplexed by this and says, but you don't look like you are handicapped. The kid says, I will be after my dad finds out I saved from drowning. Husband and wife are waiting at the bus stop with their 9 children. A blind man joins them after a few minutes. When the bus arrives, they find it overloaded and only the wife and the 9 kids are able to fit onto the bus. So the husband and the blind man decide to walk. After a while, the husband gets irritated by the ticking of the stick of the blind man as he taps it on the sidewalk and says to him, why don't you put a piece of rubber at the end of your stick? That ticking sound is driving me crazy. The blind man replies, if you would have put a rubber at the end of your stick, we'd be riding the bus. A guy runs a stop sign and gets pulled over by a policeman. Cop says, license and registration, please. Guy says, what for? Cop says, you didn't come to a complete stop at the stop sign. Guy says, I slowed down and no one was coming. Cop says, you still didn't come to a complete stop. License and registration, please. Guy says, what's the difference? Cop says, the difference is you have to come to a complete stop. License and registration, please. Guy says, if you can show me the difference between slow down and stop, I'll give you my license and registration. Cop says, okay, exit your vehicle, sir. At this point, the cop takes out his nightstick and starts beating the ever-loving guy and says, do you want me to stop or just slow down?
A father walks into a bookstore with his young son. The boy is holding a quarter. Suddenly, the boy starts choking, going blue in the face. The father realizes the boy has swallowed the quarter and starts panicking, shouting for help. A well-dressed, attractive, and serious-looking woman in a blue business suit is sitting at a coffee bar reading a newspaper and sipping a cup of coffee. At the sound of the commotion, she looks up, puts her coffee cup down, neatly folds the newspaper and places it on the counter, gets up from her seat and makes her way, unhurried, across the bookstore. Reaching the boy, the woman carefully drops his pants, takes hold of the boy's and starts to squeeze and twist, gently at first, and then ever so firmly. After a few seconds, the boy convulses violently and coughs up the quarter, which the woman deftly catches in her free hand. Releasing the boy's the woman hands the coin to the father and walks back to her seat in the coffee bar without saying a word. As soon as he is sure that his son has suffered no ill effects, the father rushes over to the woman and starts thanking her, saying, "I've never seen anybody do anything like that before. It was fantastic. Are you a doctor?" Darth and Mateo decided to rob a bank. They quickly devised a good plan, and they put their plan into action. Darth drove up to the front of the bank that they had decided to rob. Darth turned to Mateo and asked him, "Now, do you remember what the plan is?" Mateo sighed and replied, Yeah, I remember." Darth went over the plan once more and let Mateo out to do his stuff. After waiting in the car for quite a bit, Mateo bursts out of the bank's doors, the alarm blaring. Mateo was lugging a bank safe behind him by a rope tied around it. A security guard ran out of the bank, his pants down around his ankles and attempting to reach his gun. Mateo breathed heavily as he tried to put the safe in the car, but finally just gave up and dropped the safe behind. Mateo ran into the passenger seat and pulled the door shut, the car already moving. The security guard yelled, "Stop! Stop!" while the pair drove off. Leaving the safe with the rope tied tightly around it behind, Darth frantically asked Mateo, "What the hell happened in there?" Mateo was panting and choked out, "What do you mean? I followed the plan exactly." Darth paused and yelled, "You idiot! You were supposed to tie up the guard and blow the safe!" Steve comes home and asks his wife, Colette, where their son is. Colette replies that he's downstairs playing with his new chemistry set. Steve is curious, so he wanders downstairs to see what their son is doing. As he's walking down the steps, he hears a banging sound. When he gets to the bottom, he sees his son pounding a nail into the wall. Steve says to his son, "What are you doing? I thought you were playing with your chemistry set. Why are you hammering a nail into the wall?" Steve's son replied, "This isn't a nail, Dad, it's a worm. I put these chemicals on it, and it became hard as a rock." Steve thought about it for a minute and said, "I'll tell you what, son. Give me those chemicals, and I'll give you a new Porsche." His son quite naturally said, "Sure, why not?" The next day, his son went into the garage to see his new car. Parked in the garage was a brand new Ferrari Enzo. I don't know the sin NNO. Just then, Steve walked in. He asked his father where his Porsche was. Steve replied, "It's right there behind the Ferrari. The Ferrari is from your mother." A scientist went to a brain store to get some brains to complete a study. He sees a sign remarking on the quality of professional brains offered at this particular brain store. He begins to ask questions about the cost of these brains. "How much does it cost for an engineer brain?" the scientist asks. $3 an ounce. "How much does it cost for programmer brain?" the scientist asks. $4 an ounce. "How much for lawyer brain?" the scientist asks. $1,000 an ounce. "Why is lawyer brain so much more?" the scientist asks. "Do you know how many lawyers we had to use to get 1 ounce of brain?" A young girl gets married, and a few days later her mother goes to visit. When she knocks on the door, she is shocked to see her daughter open it naked. "What are you doing?" she asks. "Mom, it's my love dress. Don't you like it?" "I'll come back in a few weeks when the honeymoon is over," replies the mom. When she goes back, she is shocked when once again her daughter is naked. "Now what are you doing?" "Mom, it's my love dress. It keeps the marriage spicy." Later that night, the mom decides to try it for herself. When her husband comes home, he gives the same reaction. "Honey, what are you doing?" She gives him the same answer her daughter gave her. "It's my love dress. What do you think of it?" Her husband thinks long and hard and says, "I think you should have ironed it." One night, an old man accidentally bumped into his daughter-in-law in the dark. In the confusion, he fumbled and accidentally pressed against her chest. Startled, the daughter-in-law shouted, "What are you doing? Don't you have any shame?" Embarrassed, the old man stammered, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought it was your mother-in-law." She glared at him and fired back, "Really? You can't tell the difference between boiled eggs and an omelet." There were 3 people stranded on an island, a brunette, a redhead, and a blonde. The brunette looked over the water to the mainland and estimated about 20 miles to shore, so she announced, "I'm going to try to swim to shore." So she swam out 5 miles and got really tired. She swam out 10 miles from the island, and she was too tired to go on, so she drowned. The second one, the redhead, said to herself, "I wonder if she made it. I guess it's better to try to get to the mainland than stay here and starve." So she attempts to swim out. The redhead had a lot more endurance than the brunette, as she swam out 10 miles before she even got tired. After 15 miles, she was too tired to go on, so she drowned. So the blonde thought to herself, "I wonder if they made it. I think I'd better try to make it too." So she swam out 5 miles, 10 miles, 15 miles, and 19 miles from the island. The shore was just in sight, but she said, "I'm too tired to go on." So she swam back. A police chief, a fire chief, and a city manager were traveling together by car to a municipal management conference in a distant city. Their car broke down in a rural area, and they were forced to seek shelter for the night at a nearby farmhouse. The farmer welcomed them in, but cautioned them that there were only 2 spare beds and that one of them would have to sleep in the barn with the farm animals. After a short conference, the police chief agreed to take the barn. Shortly after retiring, a knock was heard on the door of the farmhouse. The party inside answered to find the police chief standing there, complaining that he could not sleep. There were pigs in the barn, he said, and he was reminded of the days when everyone called him a pig. The fire chief then volunteered to exchange with the police chief. A short time later, another knock was heard at the door. The fire chief complained that the cows in the barn reminded him of Mrs. O'Leary's cow that started the Chicago fire, and that every time he started to go to sleep, he started to have a fireman's worst nightmare, that of burning to death. The city attorney, in desperation for sleep, then agreed to sleep in the barn. This seemed like a good idea until a few minutes later when another knock was heard at the door. When the occupants answered the door, there stood the very indignant cows and pigs. 3 ladies all have separate husbands named Leroy. One evening, while sharing a few drinks at the bar, one of the ladies suggests, "Let's name our Leroys after a soda pop because I'm tired of getting my Leroy mixed up with your Leroy and her Leroy mixed up with your Leroy." The other 2 ladies agree. The first lady speaks out, "Okay, then I'm going to name my Leroy 7-Up because he has 7 inches and it's always up." The 3 ladies hoot and holler and slap each other high fives. Then the second lady says, "I'm going to name my Leroy Mountain Dew because he can mount and do me any day of the week." Again, the 3 ladies hoot and holler and slap each other more high fives. The third lady then says, "You know, those 2 Leroys were good, but I'm going to name my Leroy Jack Daniels." The other 2 ladies shout in unison, "Jack Daniels? That's not a soda pop. That's a hard liquor." The third lady bursts out, "That's my Leroy." A man enters a confessional and says to the Irish priest, "Father, it has been 1 month since my last confession. I've had Fanny Green every week for the last month." The priest tells the sinner, "You are forgiven. Go out and say 3 Hail Marys." Soon another man enters the confessional. "Father, it has been 2 months since my last confession. I have had with Fanny Green twice a week for the last 2 months. This time the priest asks, 'Who is this Fanny Green?' 'A new woman in the neighborhood,' the sinner replies. 'Very well,' says the priest. 'Go and say 10 Hail Marys.'" The next morning in church, the priest is preparing to deliver his sermon when a gorgeous, tall woman enters the church. All the men's eyes fall upon her as she slowly sashays up the aisle and sits down in front of the altar. Her dress is green and very short, with matching shiny emerald green shoes. The priest and altar boy gasp as the woman sits down with her legs slightly spread apart, Sharon Stone style. The priest turns to the altar boy and whisperingly asks, "Is that Fanny Green?" The altar boy replies, "No, Father, I think it's just the reflection off her shoes." 3 old men were sitting around and talking. The 80-year-old said, "The best thing that could happen to me would just be to be able to have a good pee. I stand there for 20 minutes and it dribbles and hurts. I have to go over and over again." The 85-year-old said, "The best thing that could happen to me is if I could have one good bowel movement. I take every kind of laxative I can get my hands on, and it's still a problem. Then the 90-year-old said, "That's not my problem. Every morning at 6 a.m. sharp, I have a good long pee. At 6:30 a.m. sharp, I have a great bowel movement. The best thing that could happen to me would be if I could wake up before 7 a.m. A farmer took his truck in for repairs. The local mechanics couldn't do it while he waited, so as he didn't live far, he said he would just walk home. On the way home, he stopped at the hardware store and bought a bucket and a gallon of paint. He then stopped by the feed store and picked up a couple of chickens and a goose. However, struggling outside the store, he now had a problem: how to carry his entire purchases home. While he was scratching his head, he was approached by a little old lady who told him she was lost. "Can you tell me how to get to 1603 Mockingbird Lane?" she asked. "Well," said the farmer, "as a matter of fact, my farm is very close to that house. I would gladly walk you there, but I can't carry this lot." "Why don't you put the can of paint in the bucket?" suggested the little old lady. "Carry the bucket in one hand, put a chicken under each arm, and carry the goose in your other hand." "Why, thank you very much," he said, and proceeded to walk the old girl home. On the way, he said, "Let's take my shortcut and go down this alley. We'll be there in no time." The little old lady looked him over cautiously, then said, "I'm a lonely widow without a husband to defend me. How do I know that when we get in the alley you won't hold me up against the wall, pull up my skirt, and have your way with me?" "Holy smokes, lady," the farmer said. "I'm carrying a bucket, a gallon of paint, 2 chickens, and a goose. How in the world could I possibly hold you up against the wall and do that?" "Well, if you were to do such a thing," the old lady replied, "you would set the goose down, cover him with the bucket, put the paint on top of the bucket, and I would hold the chickens." There was a man who worked for the post office whose job was to process all the mail that had illegible addresses. One day, a letter came addressed in a shaky handwriting to God with no address. He thought he should open it to see what it was about. The letter read, "Dear God, I am an 83-year-old widow living on a very small pension. Yesterday, someone stole my purse. It had $100 in it, which was all the money I had until my next pension check. Next Sunday is Christmas, and I had invited 2 of my friends over for dinner. Without that money, I have nothing to buy food with. I have no family to turn to, and you are my only hope. Can you please help me? Sincerely, Edna." The postal worker was touched. He showed the letter to all the other workers. Each one dug into his or her wallet and came up with a few dollars. By the time he made the rounds, he had collected $96, which they put into an envelope and sent to the woman. The rest of the day, all the workers felt a warm glow thinking of Edna and the dinner she would be able to share with her friends. Christmas came and went. A few days later, another letter came from the same old lady to God. All the workers gathered around while the letter was opened. It read, "Dear God, how can I ever thank you enough for what you did for me? Because of your gift of love, I was able to fix a glorious dinner for my friends. We had a very nice day, and I told my friends of your wonderful gift. By the way, there was $4 missing. I think it must have been those bastards at the post office." An old lady walked into the Bank of America with a huge bag of money. She told the receptionist that she would like to meet the president of the bank as she wanted to deposit a large sum of money. The receptionist objected, but the old lady wouldn't move, so with no option left, she went inside the office. She came back and said, "You are lucky this morning. He will see you." Bank president: "How can I help you, madam?" She, old lady: "I would like to open a new account and deposit this money." He: "How much money do you like to deposit?" She: $180,000, please." Started dumping the whole amount on his table. The bank president was a bit surprised. "How did you get this much cash, madam? We are not a laundering facility." She: "Oh, it's nothing illegal. I make bets." He: "What kind of bets?" She: "For example, I bet you that your right hand will taste like eggs, just your right hand and not your left. Let's meet again by tomorrow 9 a.m. If I'm right, you will owe me $25,000. If I lose, I'll pay you $10,000. The man is shocked. How is that even possible? But he's a banker at heart, and this is easy money, so he accepts the bet almost immediately. She. Okay then, I'll come around 9 a.m. tomorrow with my lawyer. Don't try to dodge the bet. No regrets. Feeling hesitant before her certainty, he mumbles his agreement. It was so bizarre he didn't even like eggs, but he was so tense about it he couldn't sleep all night, licking his hands and smelling them to make sure they smell normal. The next day at 9 a.m., the old lady was there, right on time, with her witness. She. Can I check your hands now, sir? He. Yes, go ahead. She held his hands and started sniffing his right hand. Then she licked it briefly to confirm. Her lawyer started banging his head against the wall. The president, delighted with his $10,000 win and kicking himself for worrying, asked the lady what was wrong with lawyer's strange behavior. Lawyer. She had a bet with me for $100,000. I can't believe I lost. She said she will be licking the hands of the president of the Bank of America at 9 a.m. today. Two lawyers had been stranded on a deserted island for several months. The only other thing on the island was a tall coconut tree which provided their food. And each day one of the lawyers climbed to the top of the tree to see if he could see a rescue boat coming. One day, the lawyer yelled down from the tree, "Wow, I can't believe my eyes. There is a girl out there floating in our direction." The lawyer on the ground was most skeptical and said, "I think you're hallucinating and you should come down right now." So the lawyer reluctantly climbed down the tree and told his friend that he had just actually seen a naked blonde woman floating face up, headed toward their island. The other lawyer started to laugh, thinking his friend had surely lost his mind. But within a few minutes, up to their beach floated a naked blonde woman, face up and totally unconscious. The two lawyers went over to her and discovered, yes, she was alive. One said to the other, "You know, we've been on this island for months now without a woman. It's been a long time. Do you think we should, The other lawyer glanced down at the totally naked woman and asked, "Out of what?" Once there were two twins, Joe and John. Joe was the owner of a dilapidated old boat which sank the same day that John's wife died. A few days later, a kindly old woman saw Joe and mistook him for John. "I'm sorry to hear about your loss. You must just feel terrible." "Hell no. In fact, I'm sort of glad to be rid of her. She was a rotten old thing right from the beginning. Her bottom was all shriveled up and she smelled like old dead fish. She was always losing her water. She had a bad crack in the back and a pretty big hole in the front, too. Every time I used her, her hole got bigger and she leaked like crazy. I guess what finally finished her off was when I rented her to these four guys looking for a good time. I warned them that she wasn't very good, but they wanted to use her anyhow. The fools tried to get in her all at once and she split right up the middle. Ned decided to go golfing in Scotland with his buddy Carl, so they loaded up Ned's minivan and headed north. After driving for a few hours, they got caught in a terrible blizzard, so they pulled into a nearby farm and asked the attractive lady who answered the door if they could spend the night. "I realize it's terrible weather out there and I have this huge house all to myself, but I'm recently widowed," she explained. "And I'm afraid the neighbors will talk if I let you stay in my house." "Don't worry," Ned said. "We'll be happy to sleep in the barn, and if the weather breaks, we'll be gone at first light." The lady agreed, and the two men found their way to the barn and settled in for the night. Come morning, the weather had cleared, and they got on their way. About 2 years later, Ned got an unexpected letter from an attorney. It took him a few minutes to figure it out, but he finally determined that it was from the attorney of that attractive widow he had met on the golf weekend. He dropped in on his friend Carl and asked, "Carl, that night at the barn in that farm we stayed at on our golf holiday in Scotland about 2 years ago, do you remember it?" "Sure I do," said Carl. "Did you, happen to get up in the middle of the night and pay the widow a visit at the house?" "Well, yes," Carl said, a little embarrassed about being found out. "I have to admit that I did." "And did you happen to give her a false name?" Carl's face turned beet red, and he said, "Yeah, look, I'm really sorry, buddy. I panicked a bit and gave her your name, actually. Why do you ask?" "Because I'm rich. She just died and left me everything." These two girls were in a movie when one leaned over to the other one and whispered in her ear, "The guy next to me is masturbating. What should I do?" She looks at her in horror and says, "Just ignore him, duh." She says, "I can't," and the other one says, "Why the hell not?" And she softly replies, "Because he's using my hand."